In 12.1, since we've already been working with one-step equations, now we're going to be looking at solving two-step equations to use in order to solve problems. Now, if we were to think back at what we just had worked on with solving one-step equations, writing them, and determining variables, number 29 on the test, or the opportunity that we just took, Tanisha had 7 less than 4 times as many cars as Fernando. If Tanisha had 9 cars, write an equation to find out how many toy cars Fernando has. And before, I was not having you solve it because we haven't solved two-step equations yet. Well, here, when we look at our variable in the meeting, I'd first be looking at, well, I'm going to say that F is the number of cars Fernando has. And when I would write my equation, I'm looking at this saying, well, I can see that Fernando has, or Tanisha has 7 less than 4 times as many cars as Fernando. So I'm going to say that it would be 4F 4 times, but it's 7 less than that. So 4F minus 7 equals 9 because Tanisha has 9 cars, and so it would be 4F minus 7 equals 9. I didn't have you solve from there because we haven't talked about solving two-step equations yet. However, now we'll come back to this question at the end to determine how many cars Fernando has. So moving forward, if we look at what is a two-step equation, well, a two-step equation is an equation that contains 2 operations. One-step equations, you do the opposite of what is shown, and whatever you do to one side, you do to the other in order to solve for the variable. Here, you have 2 operations, so you're going to work backwards with your orders of operation. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, and as always, you do the opposite of what is shown. So let's take a look at an example. If I have the equation 6x minus 14 equals 16, well, right now we have some answer choices, and I'll never give you multiple choice, but for this example we have some options. 6x minus 14 equals 16. So I am first going to work backwards with my orders of operation. And my orders of operation, remember, we have parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Now I'm really only focusing on our operation ones, where we have addition, subtraction, and then I have multiplication, division. And in this situation, remember, I'm going to work backwards with my orders of operations. So that means I'm going to start off doing my addition, subtraction first, and then I'll do my multiplication and division. So I see subtraction here, minus 14. So that means I'm going to add 14. So I'm going to add 14 to undo the subtraction. And remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to add 14 to the other side. 16 plus 14 gives me 30. When I added 14 here, I canceled out the negative 14, leaving me only with 6x. Well, now we're at a one-step equation. This is what we've been looking at before. So 6x equals 30. I see multiplication. I see multiplication here. So that means I'm going to do divide. And what am I multiplying by? Well, I'm multiplying by 6, so that means I'm going to divide by 6. Do the opposite. So when I divide by 6 on one side, I divide by 6 on the other. So I'm going to divide by 6 to undo the multiplication. And when I divide 30 by 6, I get 5. So if I were to look at my answer choices up above, the correct answer would be C. However, I'm never going to give you a multiple choice question like this. So make sure that you understand showing your work doing both sides of the equation. Alright, your turn to try. So go ahead, pause, and work through these 2 problems, and we'll check back in a second. Alright, so our first one, 5x plus 3 equals 18. Well, I'm going to first, because it's easier to work with, it's outside the box, I'm going to rewrite this just to make it easier on me. So I'm going to first look at, remember we worked backwards our orders of operation. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And remember, we're looking at our first operations that we're going to work with. We'll do addition, subtraction first, and then we will multiply and then divide. So my first step is going to get rid of my plus 3. So I'm going to do the opposite. So that means I'm going to subtract 3. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So that cancels out my positive 3. So I'm left with 5x equals 15. Now I'm at my multiplication division. I see multiplication, so I will divide. So I'm going to divide by 5. And I have 15 divided by 5. 5's cancels out. 15 divided by 5, I'm left with x equals 3. For 3x minus 4 equals 23. Again, I'm going to rewrite this just to make this easier. I'm going to bring my pen size down. 3x minus 4 equals 23. So I'm going to do the opposite. I see subtraction, so I'm going to add 4. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That cancels my negative 4 out. So I have 3x equals 23 plus 4 is 27. I see multiplication, so I divide. 27 divided by 3. 3's cancels out over here, isolating my variable, leaving x by itself. 27 divided by 3, I get 9. Alright, our second example. Now we have to pull it from a storyline. Science Club sells bird feeders for $8 each. The club spends $32 in building materials. The club profit is $128. How many bird feeders did the club sell? Use B, so they gave you the variable, so make sure that you're using B the whole time to represent the number of bird feeders. Use the equation 8B minus 32 equals 128. So if they gave us our equation, and if they didn't, we'd be looking at this saying, well, if we make $8 on we sell bird feeders for $8, that means so every bird feeder we sell for 8. However, it costs us $32 in building materials. So if I sold one bird feeder, I'd have $8, but I spent all this material cost, so I have to take it away from that. However, in the end, I made $128. So I know I made more than one bird feeder, so I need to figure out how many bird feeders I made in order to make that $128 profit. So since I see, getting back to solving it, since I see subtraction minus 32, I'm going to add 32 to undo the subtraction. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And so 128 plus 32, I get 160. Now I'm left with 8b equals 160. I see multiplication, so that means I do the opposite, and now I divide. And I'm going to divide each side by 8 to undo the multiplication. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That cancels my 8 out, isolating the b, the variable. And I have 160 divided by 8, and I have 20. So that leaves us with the club sold 20 equals b, so 20 bird feeders. Alright, you and a friend split the cost of a mopped rental. Your friend pays the bill. You owe your friend now because he paid. You owe your friend only $12 because your friend owed you $9 from yesterday. So he borrowed money from you. He owes you that $9. You now only have to pay him $12. However, you split that bill. So how much of the total bill, or how much was the total bill? Let M represent the cost of the mopped rental. So solve the equation. They gave us our equation. M divided by 2, because the total cost of the rental is M. We're dividing that by 2 because there's 2 of you. However, you don't need to pay him the $9 that he borrowed from you before. Now you owe your friend only $12. So now we have to solve for m. Well, I see subtraction, so I will add. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That cancels out my -9 here. So I'm left with, and I'm going to go below the box, m divided by 2 equals 12 plus 9 is 20. I'm sorry, 21. And then when I divide, or I multiply by 2, because I see division. I see division here. M divided by 2. So I need to get the 2 out of the denominator. In order to get the 2 out of the denominator, I need to multiply by 2. And when I multiply by 2, that can cross simplify. So that my 2's cancel out here, and I'm just left with m over 1, which means just m. And remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have to multiply by 2 to the other side. And I'm left with 21 times 2. So 21 times 2, 41. So in total, how much was the cost of the total bill? It'd be $41 before you split it and you had to pay your friend. Alright, and as I said before, we're going to go back and look at that question about the toy cars. So if we come back to our problem here, remember that we had F as the number of cars Fernando has, and we said that 4F minus 7 equals 9. Well, now we can actually solve this. So I do the opposite of what is shown. I see subtraction, so minus 7, so I'm going to add 7. So I add 7 to both sides. That cancels my -7 out here, so I'm left with 4F equals 16. I see multiplication now, so I do the opposite. That means I'm going to divide by 4. 16 divided by 4. 4 cancels out here, so I'm isolating the variable, leaving F. And 16 divided by 4 is 4. So in the end, the question is saying, how many toy cars does Fernando has? We'd say that Fernando has 4 toy cars. There you go. Alright, that is the end of lesson 12.1.